Welcome to the Dragon's Den. I'm your venerable host Orochi, and today we're going to be talking about the only thing that really matters. Dragons. Specifically today we are going over dragons in Pathfinder 2, more specifically the Ravager archetype. All its delicious dragony flavored feats. We went over the ancestry feats earlier, and that gives you a little bit of taste. For all the other ancestries, their ancestry feats give you all the flavor you need to be that thing. But for dragons, the ancestry feats are kind of lightly flavored because there's so much power in a dragon to be spread out amongst a character that Mark needed some other way to budget that power, and he did it by making these archetypes you can take instead of class feats, and these will give you all the cool stuff that you want for being a dragon. So let's start right at the top here with one of the most iconic things, Breath of the Dragon. And a lot of these are fantastically built because they are like backwards compatible. When you take this feat as the archetype, and you also took this feat as your ancestry feat, you refund the ancestry feat, and this makes it better because it goes from dealing D4s to D6s. So that's a modest amount of extra damage, and you get the weaker feat back, which is great. You can automatically immediately retrain it. That's great. This is great. It's still not fantastic damage because damage balance or whatever, but it's cool. And once you get to level 9 and you can get deep breath, then you're talking about doing some actually decent damage with your breath weapons. Moving on, Draconic Advance. This is spend 2 actions, get 3 attacks. This works decently on a fighter because that's why it works on dragons as monsters, because they have fighter progression. Because otherwise, you compare this to a monk getting 2 attacks for 1 action, the monk's flurry of blows is just better than this. Period. Oh wait, no, this isn't the flurry. This is the rush attack, the charge attack. That's right. Advance. This is basically barbarians and fighters get this, so this kind of makes it so that everybody can get this. Like, the classes who really want it already have it in their class, so the only thing better with this, I think, is it specifically says you can use your fly speed and stuff. I don't think the class variants allow that. I am unsure. But, it's alright. Like, maybe a monk or a ranger or some other yet unreleased class might want to charge an attack that doesn't have it in class already. Who knows? So this is probably not a great feat unless you find yourself needing this specific action often. Because it's 2 actions, move twice, and attack. Like, how often do you need to move that sort of distance to get a free attack? When you could just... Most of the time, you're going to move once and attack, and it'll be fine. So, not great. And then we have Ravager Scales. Another refund feat. And this boosts up the empowered scales that you can get for your ancestry and makes them +2 instead of +1, but it gives you a dex cap of +3. So you still can only ever get the 5 AC average, whereas the regular empowered scales is a little bit better if you can max out your dex. But it also doesn't really take effect until like level 7 or whatever, so, And then we get Fool's Wisdom. Specific for Harlequin dragons. You delve deep into the enemy's strengths and weaknesses, relying on your instinctive ability to assess them from just a brief glance. the better to poke fun at them later. I haven't looked over a lot of the heritage-specific feats for the ancestry or either of the archetypes, so most of these are going to be pretty new to me. Because there's a fair amount of heritage-specific feats, which is fantastic. Like, more options need to have that sort of stuff, especially for classes that have, you know, subclasses and stuff. You need a lot of flavor to help bring that forward. Roll perception against their deception or stealth. Who is not concealed or hidden. Crit success. The GM chooses 2 of the following pieces of information about them. This is basically just an elaborate recall knowledge, except for you can use it against a specific person. So I think both Magus and fighters and maybe rogues have this ability, where they can watch you for a little bit and then do a recall knowledge check on you. So it's basically all Harlequin dragons can do that if they really want to. It's all... I think because it targets a specific individual instead of like more broader terms of a monster type, this will be good when you're fighting specific individuals. Because otherwise, if you're just fighting a human, then, you know, they could have any saves. And looking up what the general monster type for, you know, any ancestry will give you fairly useless information. So this can be good, especially if you're fighting a lot of humanoid opponents. Inscribe Disorientingglyph. For Edict dragons who also have their tail unarmed attack unlocked. That's kind of specific. Instead of bashing a foe with your tail, you can inscribe a disorienting glyph. Now that is cool as hell. Like, instead of tail slapping somebody, you write a glyph on them with your tail, because Edict dragons specifically have tails that are like ink pens. They ooze ink and they can write with them. They're not quite prehensile, but they're very close to it. And I think they have much more control over like the end and not the whole thing, because they can't wrap it around stuff like a prehensile tail, but they have a lot of control over it so they can write, which is crazy interesting. Like, just such a cool idea. Strike with your tail, unarmed attack, but instead of dealing damage or applying any of the other effects you would normally apply on a successful strike, you inscribe a glyph on the target. The glyph makes the target flat-footed until the end of your next turn on a successful strike, or for 1 minute on a critical success. Alright, that is crazy good. Like, until the end of your next turn. So you could start your turn by using this attack and then get the benefit of it for the rest of your attacks and for your entire next turn, so long as you hit. And if you get a crit, if you're like a fighter Edict Dragon who takes this, and you know, maybe take some intimidation or have somebody who can do sickens so that you increase your chance to crit, and then you crit and something's flat-footed for a minute. You just get one good jab of this and you write a rune on them that makes them flat-footed for the rest of the friggin' combat. That is crazy useful. The target or its allies can rub the glyph off by spending a single interact or by spending 2 interacts to critically succeed. Okay. So it can be countered fairly easily. But it's still, you're spending an action and then they have to spend an action, so it's equal sum. Worst case scenario is you spent an action and they waste an action. Better case scenario is you spent an action, they're slowed 1 or slowed 2 and can't really afford to lose an action getting rid of this when you can probably flat-foot them in other ways as well, so it's not worth their time, but then those other ways you would flat-footing can probably be put towards doing more damage in one way or another. So it's cool. And options that'll make it so that enemies have to make a choice and both choices have negatives is great. So that's still a cool ability. It's just not amazing, but it's still really useful. Terrifying Rebuke. This is for nightmare dragons. Whenever a creature within 30 feet critically fails an attack roll against you, you taunt them and get to make a demoralize against them. Because demoralize can only be done once on a creature before it's immune to demoralize for a minute, this is less useful than it otherwise would seem, and it only works on a crit fail. So it's all right when it works, especially if you I was going to say especially if you were a caster, but casters aren't going to get critical failed against very often. So a nightmare dragon that's a champion or something, maybe? You get a free demoralize. It's all right. When it works, that's cool. You save yourself from doing the demoralize action, but it's not fantastic. But there are a lot of classes who don't have good reactions, so this is nice to have in your pocket, I guess. Wing deflection. Blue, brass, edict, magma, paradise, silver, or vortex dragons. Whenever you are targeted by an attack, and that's key right there, targeted, not hit. Which I hate when things are like, hey, somebody's about to do something. Would you like to attempt to be useful against that? I would rather it's an attack hits you and then you can trigger this if it would make the attack miss. This makes it so you gain a +2 bonus to your AC as if you had raised a shield. And if you're flying when you do this, you go down 10 feet after the attack. So it's shield deflect. It's the same reaction that allows you to raise a shield when you're attacked. It's not great. It's bad because your wing isn't like a shield, so you can't make a champion kind of shield build that blocks well, and it has nothing else going for it. There's no other feats that make this better in any way to make it more like blocking, and you have to use it before the attack roll is made. So it's like, if you don't have anything, it's something to have, and you can use it because you're not using it on anything else. But if you can find any other way to have a reaction, get something else, because this isn't good. Which sucks, because this should be cool, because it's, fairly iconic for all the dragons that can choose this, that their monster variants have this ability. But for player characters, it's less useful. Especially if you can get this. For Bliss, Bronze, Crypt, Gold, Infernal, Occult, Red, Solar, Time, or Umbral dragons. You get to make an attack of opportunity with your bite. So every class can get attack of opportunity. That's awesome. Period. It's just awesome. It sucks that not every dragon can get this. So much so that I find myself only wanting to make these kinds of dragons specifically so I can get this. Which is sort of unfortunate. Devastating Bite. This is basically power attack with your bite. You spend 2 actions and you add an extra die of damage. As everybody who's done any amount of optimization knows, that power attack is not great. It's cool if you need to get over some resistances, or if you're attacking something that has a high AC, so only your first attack has a good chance of hitting. But if your second attack has even a modest chance of hitting, it's generally better to do 2 attacks instead of a power attack. Yeah. So, less good, much more situational, but everybody can get it. Now here is Frenzy. As I was started getting into earlier, the Monk's Flurry of Blows is better. This makes it so you can combo 3 different attacks, but it has limitations on how many times you can attack with each different part. You can only bite once and then do 2 claw attacks, and it's just a way of saying, hey, you can do 1 good attack and then 2 lesser, lower damaging attacks. And it's all right. It's not great, because your third attack is generally going to be pretty terrible. Even as an agile attack, it's not great. Yeah, there's just not much you can do with it to make it better. A fighter would be decent with it, but it doesn't really combo in with most of the other player ways to make your multi-attacks better, which is usually dual wielding stuff. But it's still, it's decent. If you have an amazing third action like Demoralize, then go into this, then yeah, that's a good turn. Dream Shimmer. For Dream Dragons, a creature targets you with an attack, and you're aware of the attack and aren't flat-footed. It's a lot of extra restrictions on it just because. The channel breathes shimmering dream images around you, confusing your foe and potentially foiling the attack. You become concealed. Which concealed is decent, but just for that 1 attack. But you can do it every round, so it's not bad. Getting concealed against 1 attack every round, it's not bad. Not fantastic, but I mean, if you're a caster or whatever, and you don't really have any good defenses, then, hey, a reaction every round to get a miss chance. It's a hell of a lot better than the nothing your class normally has. Impenetrable Scales. This makes your scales medium armor, which is decent, but it's not really worth a feat, especially a 6th level feat, because you could just buy armor and perhaps look cool wearing armor, but then the only benefit of this feat is that you don't have to take your armor off when you're sleeping. It basically gives any armor you wear the comfy tag, which is not useless, but, how often are you going to be ambushed at night? Maybe once, twice a campaign? Not fantastic. Thematic as hell, but not fantastic. Jesters jeer. Your trained intimidation with Harlequin. A foe critically fails a strike against you. You laugh and poke fun at your foe's incredible incompetence, filling them with dread until they finally land a blow on you, on your sneering visage. Attempt to demoralize. If you succeed, the foe's frightened condition can't decrease to less than 1 at the end of its turn until it either successfully strikes you or doesn't observe you or sense you for at least 1 round. Braggart swashbucklers get this. as their standard thing when they demoralize. Harlequins can get this when a foe critically fails to hit you. Like, critical fail to hit, that's a bad trigger, but it's a pretty cool ability. But if your AC is good enough that a foe critically misses you, then you've probably either got a better reaction to use for things, or are fighting something that's just like triple attacking you around like an idiot. And they're probably going to hit you next round anyway if they're doing that. So not terribly useful. Paragranite. Right? Yeah. Paragranate. That is not a word I know. Cerulean dragons. A foe's turn ends during which that foe hits you with a melee strike. You wander away from danger, putting yourself at a safe distance or repositioning yourself to strike. You stride up to half your speed and your movement doesn't trigger reactions triggered by movement. And you can do it with swim and fly, but not burrow? Huh. Interesting. I guess because cerulean dragons can't normally get a burrow speed. But I mean, you could probably find an item that'll do that for you. It's weird that it would specifically exclude that. This is a reposition. Several ancestries have that kind of thing. And it's a decent move as a reaction. You get hit, and then you get the hell out. It's at the end of their turn, so you can't prevent them from doing any more attacks to you, but it doesn't cost you an action. If you're a caster and something comes up to you and starts hitting you and you want to get the hell out of there, then get the hell out of there. You just have to try and get your movement speed up more to make it useful. Really useful. But half your speed is never going to be twice a monster single move, so it's better than a step, and it might get you out of range of some shorter ranged creatures, but at higher levels, most things are probably still going to be in reach if they're a reach thing, unless you were already at its medium or maximum reach. But yeah, this is a good feat. I would say for specific characters that don't have better reactions, this is definitely, out of some of these reactions, one of the better ones as a backup. Piezo Breath. You have to have Dragon Breath for an Amber Dragon. Oh, this changes your breath weapon. Makes it into more of a trap. And anything that steps into it will then... steps into it or is pushed into it. So it's nice that it specifically says forced movement triggers it, which you would presume so, but there are some things elsewhere in the game that are like, oh, forced movement can't give you negative effects. Like, you're not supposed to be able to force move people into damage or like off cliffs and stuff. And it's like, that should be the entire point of forced movement, is to hit people into danger. So you can basically lay your breath weapon down and have it trigger when somebody steps on it. That's pretty cool. I don't know what Amber Dragon breath is, like cone or line or whatever, so that might be different, but it's alright. It's a nifty ability. Thought Travel for Astral Dragons. You plan out a movement in your mind's eye and then instantly transform into thought, moving to the end location without passing through the intervening space. Choose any space you can see that you could reach in a single stride or with a single climb, fly, or swim action. It's weird that that says climb. Astral dragons must be easily able to get a climb speed. You instantly appear in the space you choose. This movement doesn't trigger reactions based on movement. Once per minute, you can teleport as a normal move. That's once per combat teleport. That's pretty cool. Like, it's not amazing, but it's pretty cool. If there's an upgrade to this somewhere else to make it more frequent, which I highly doubt, then it would be really cool. Then you could do some super anime DBZ teleporting kind of shenanigans. And lots of people like that. Twisting Tail for Apocalypse, Copper, Crystal, Etheric, Green, Havoc, Lunar, or Tumult dragons. And you have to have your tail unarmed attack unlocked. And this is basically the monk stand still. That's basically what it is, only you have to use your tail. Not as good as Bite of Opportunity, unless you specifically want to have a decent chance at stopping movement. It's slightly less useful, but that's still good. It's got less triggers, of course, because it's just about stopping moves, but that's good stuff. If you can't get Bite of Opportunity, this is definitely second place of things you want as a reaction. Absolute Cold. Lunar Dragon Breath. This is a meta breath feat, which is super cool to have a Ravager one, because that's sort of one of the themes of the Dragon Mage archetype, is to give you meta breath feats. But if your next action is to use Dragon Breath, your Dragon Breath ignores an amount of the target's resistance to cold equal to twice your level. And this applies to all damage your Dragon Breath deals, including persistent damage and damage caused by an ongoing effect of your Dragon's Breath. It's unfortunate that there's no real way to get through immunities, because if something's immune and then you manage to damage it, where are you going to put it? It should still get resistance to it, but where would you put that? I think I would definitely make that as a custom rule to run at some point, but I'd have to figure out where I would like to put that. This is super good. If you're a Lunar Dragon and you want to be good with your breath weapon and hit some stuff, and you're fighting cold resistance stuff, pick this up. There's no reason not to, because otherwise your breath weapon's going to be garbage. Adapt Resistance for Tumult Dragons. You take acid, cold, electricity, fire, or sonic damage, and then you change your resistance to that type for 2 rounds. That's crazy awesome. Especially since there's 2 feats you can take for dragons. One gives you half your level of resist, and then there's an upgrade to that that gives you full level to resist. And then as a Tumult Dragon, just going, hey, I'm fighting cold stuff today. I'm just going to have cold resist most of the time whenever anything hits me. That's awesome. You just adapt to the theme of whatever things you're fighting. That's super good. As a reaction, that's... Cerulean Hazard Sense for Cerulean Dragons. +1 to perception checks to find traps, to AC against traps, and saves against traps. And you can auto-search without using the search action. That's basically, I think, what most rogues get. Trap Finder. I think that's basically Trap Finder. but any cerulean dragon can take it. It's a little high in level for what it does, but it's all right. It's all right. If traps are being a problem for your group, and you're a cerulean dragon, and you're not a rogue or any other class that gets that, then, and you don't have one of those classes in your party, it's all right. But you know, like a lot of tumblers need to be in place for that to be useful for you. Constrict for Apocalypse or any Imperial Dragon. You have to have something grabbed or restrained, and then you can hit them for bludgeoning damage equal to your level plus your strength modifier for basic fort save. Fort save sucks because almost the vast majority of monsters have good or better fort saves. But this is an actual decent ability. It's low damage. No matter what way you look at it, it's low damage, right? But like all of the class abilities that do similar to this, like most of them don't take an action and they'll just do like your strength damage, or you'll spend an action and like the barbarian one is much better because you get to add your instinct, but like every other form of grab type damage is pretty terrible. So level plus strength mod isn't terrible. It's decent. Like there are a lot worse options in the games, making this one look decent. The issue is if you have them grabbed, you can still strike them for greater damage, but if you already like hit them once and then used a grab action, and instead of attacking at a -10, you can use this and hope to get half damage in, which still isn't great. Not a great feat, no matter what way you look at it. Like, the theme for this feat, everywhere in this entire game, like grabbing somebody and crushing the life out of them, like everything that does this ability needs to be higher damage. Like even the Barbarians version, the damage is all right, but when you consider like 95% of monsters are probably going to succeed on a fort save against you, like it's not good. Draconic momentum. You have to have Frenzy or Coiling Frenzy and Dragon Breath. When you Frenzy is especially effective. This one that just gives you your breath weapon back. Most dragons have this. It's cool. But the special is interesting because if you gain the Coiling Frenzy feat, you can immediately retrain an 8th, 10th, or 12th level feat to Draconic Momentum. This is against the usual rules for retraining, which don't allow you to retrain for a feat for which you wouldn't qualify at the feat's original level. It's pretty cool. Draining Bite for Umbral Dragons. Once per hour. Your devastating bite drains vigor and strength from opponents. They get... it's against your class DC. I'm always tripped up when things say class DC, but then other things will say class or spell DC. It's like, it should always... Martial characters should only ever be class DC. If you're a caster of any kind, it should be your spell casting DC. Or whichever is higher. Like, all abilities should scale off your highest DC. Like, why not? Because if it's not, guess what? That ability is going to be garbage. It is going to be saved against all the time and crit saved a lot of the time. Like, that's just the nature of the game. Bite a living target. If this strike deals the target any negative damage, you gain temporary hit points equal to your level, which lasts for a minute. That's weird. It's printed twice. Fort save just makes them enfeebled 2 for a round. That's not on a success. That's not bad. And then enfeebled 2 for a minute is pretty damn decent. As a single action, this isn't bad. Do some negative damage, get a little bit of temp HP, have a chance of doing enfeebled for a little bit. That's pretty good. Oh, and it's a free action. It's not even a single action. That's... What? It is a bite meta magic. You charge up your bite with a free action. That's especially interesting because normally you would think, well, draining bite could literally just be its own one action thing. But this means you can use this with frenzy or powerful bite or literally any other specialty bite attack you get. That's super interesting. Like this is definitely a solid ability. Like, it doesn't do a whole lot, but it does a few little things that are awesome and some decent enfeebling. It's a good ability. Empowered size. You become large, and you don't get any negative for it. You don't get clumsy. This feat basically just gives you extra reach, and you get bigger. I have an issue that I think being larger should give you a lot more, because otherwise that just breaks my immersion and all that stuff, but balance. So whatever. It's a great feat. If you want to be a big, powerful dragon, that's the start of the line, to be the biggest and the best. Exaggerate weakness for Vermilion dragons. You critically fail a saving throw against a foe's effect, or a foe critically hits you. You lean into the failure and make yourself look weak. Foe gets a will save against your class DC, and then they're immune to it for a day. That's rough. Success is a -1 status on perception and will saves for a round. That's garbage. Failure is stupefied 1 for a round. I presume stupefied 1 does both of those first things plus more. And then stupefied 2 for 1 round and stunned 1. This is a pretty terrible ability. Like, the things that it does is just all over the place. And it only, even on a crit failure, it only lasts for 1 round. I mean, you can do it often as long as you're getting critically messed up. But, I don't know. I wouldn't want to rely on getting my ass kicked to do these really, really weak effects. I mean, if you're a caster and specializing in will save stuff, then yeah, take this, because A, you're a caster, you're gonna get crit. And when that happens, you give yourself some bonus. But it's a status penalty. Like, just cast fucking Frighten or just Demoralize. Like, this is bad. You can get all of these effects so much easier than getting your face kicked in. I mean, yeah, you're not using an action or casting a spell to do those things, but getting your face kicked in is It's generally not where you want to be. But it does happen, so, it's good to be able to use something like that to your advantage if you can. Grave Breath for etheric dragons. Oh, it's meta breath feat that your meta breath gains the death trait. I don't know what that would do for you. Does having the death trait specifically do something? Very few monster traits and stuff specifically do things. They're just there to denote what other things can interact with it. Like, a lot of creatures are immune to the death trait. So when you find that trait on something, oh, this creature has a reaction to that trait. So I don't really know what good this feat would do for you. My initial reaction to this feat is it's garbage. But it's a meta breath that takes an action, so there's got to be a reason for it to exist. But I do not know what it is. Incredible resistance. This is the good one right here. You've built up magic, increasing your resistance beyond what is normally possible for an eternal dragon. Your resistance from draconic resistance increases to be equal to your level. That is awesome. Super awesome. Leak Corruption for void dragons. An adjacent creature deals piercing or slashing damage to you, or a creature deals piercing or slashing damage to you with a melee unarmed attack. That should be that's the same condition. Oh, an adjacent. I get the distinction. It has to touch you with its hands, its own claws, or be next to you. I get it. But it just sounds weird. The corruption in your blood leaks out, devouring your assailant. The triggering creature takes negative damage equal to your level with a basic reflex. This is awesome. This is basically like, xenomorph acid blood. Every time something hits you, you just... Oh! My void blood got out on you because you hit me and you take damage. That's just cool. Not really a whole lot of damage in there. Reflex is one of the better saves to hit on stuff. It's generally a mediocre save for most things, if not low. So, equal to your level in negative damage, and negative is generally only resisted by, undead and that sort of stuff. So this is pretty good. It's very thematic, and it's actually fairly useful. Like, every round, you could just be gushing blood out of things and destroying them. That's cool. Oppressive Heat for infernal dragons. You infuse your breath with the oppression of hell, crushing your foes' morale and preventing them from feeling hope. Meta breath that suppresses beneficial emotional effects for 1 round. If they crit fail, then it's 3 rounds. Doesn't deactivate things, it just makes it so they no longer get the benefit of it. And it has to be an emotion effect. I haven't delved into enough spells, especially occult spells, to know how many good emotional effects there are. But my initial reaction to this is it's not fantastic. It's cool, but... I mean, if you're a fighter, infernal dragon, who's getting their breath weapon back with every time you crit, And you can turn off, like, I don't even know, is bless? I don't think bless is an emotional effect, no. I don't know. It could be useful, but not often enough to really warrant what that does. It should have some sort of rider where it does like one ongoing damage or something. Just something. Primeval Fire. For solar dragons, you've learned how to draw the heat of a star into your breath weapon. It's, meta breath that lowers their fire resistance equal to twice your level. You know, it's like the lunar dragons one, because this is a solar dragon. It's cool. More dragons, I think, should have this sort of thing. Because I especially like the idea of, hey, my fire is so hot that I could burn a fire elemental. Like, that sort of idea that, you know, creatures that are normally heavily resistant or outright immune to something, you're just like, nah, see, you're immune to fire. I don't just spew out the power of a sun. My breath weapon is like solar napalm. It is liquid fiery death. I really like that. I do wish it was more powerful, though. Knocking down immunities would be ace. If they instead got like 20 resist, that'd be super good. Or even if enemies got like resistance equal to 3 times their level or something like that, instead of immunity, that would be cool. I'm sure there's got to be a balance point somewhere you could hit where your ability could just be like, yes, this ability's awesome, but not broken and scales properly. Scaled bulwark. Did we miss impenetrable scales? No. Yes, we did. Impenetrable scales. Oh yeah. You can also make your make your sturdy scales, which are medium armor, into heavy armor, or just a heavier version of medium armor. So you get 1 dex cap with +5 item bonus to AC. It's basically heavy armor. But then you can choose to still have it be medium armor, or make it actually heavy armor and use your heavy armor proficiency. And if you do that, you get the plate armor resist. And then you can take bulwark to get bulwark. You know, that feat that everybody loves getting so that they don't have to have dexterity. It's good. I mean, it has to be, because everybody thinks that the archetype that has bulwark is kind of OP. I haven't seen what errata they did to it. I think they just changed it so that you can't get out of it early by spending skill feats on it, but I'm unsure. Spore breath for toadstool dragons. Oh, you do a random effect. Once per hour. It basically imitates every other dragon's breath. That's interesting, but I'm not sure how useful that is. I mean, granted, if your breath weapon is being resisted or ignored by something, then sure, doing something else is more useful than doing the thing that's not working. So that's decent. Like, it's useful, circumstantially useful. We'll put it that way. Well, stunning frenzy. The power of your frenzy is too much for one opponent to handle. If you make all the attacks with draconic frenzy or coiling frenzy against the same target, if any of the strikes hits and deals damage, the target must succeed a fort save or be stunned 1. This is, the monk's stun. That's all it is. I mean, fort saves are pretty easy for monsters to do, but this is automatic. You get 3 attacks. If any of them hits, you get a chance to get stunned 1. It's a little bit high in level for what it does, but anybody getting it instead of monks, you put this on, fighters, and it's like, yeah, that's monsters are in trouble. It's good. It's definitely good. Tail swipe! You swipe with your tail. It's the barbarian's swipe attack. And any dragon can get it. That's good. It's not nearly as good as, a barbarian, even a non-raging barbarian, swinging a great axe, because great axes are d12 damage, whereas your tail is only going to be d6. So it's much less great in that sense, that it's going to be less damage than the class who generally does it, but every class can do it, so there's that. It's decent. I have a build I want to try of a sweep magus that does spell sweep with their tail. It doesn't require this feat specifically, but it uses your tail, and to me that sounds awesome. Electric arc with your tail. Hit 2 creatures and zap 2 creatures. We'll see how it turns out. Thundering Bite for Cloud Dragons. Fortitude save or be deafened for a round or a minute. If you crit, they're deafened for a minute and permanently deafened on a crit, and then are immune for a minute. Like, how useful is deafened? Does it ever do anything? Can it ever do anything? Like, the number of times where that's going to be useful is pretty rare. It'll probably maybe stop bards from doing their bard thing, but I don't know. I don't think that's super useful. Widen breath. You double the size of your breath as a meta breath. It's good. I mean, you always want to be able to hit more things, so this increases your chance to hit more things. And if you use deep breath, it triples the area. So that's amazing. You're probably never going to be in big fights where you could hit like 5, 10, 15 enemies, but if you manage to play like Kingmaker or any war kind of game, and you're doing some Dynasty Warriors stuff, it's like, boom, hey, you just took out a whole troop of friggin' enemies. Not an actual, troop, but, like a squad. Super interesting. Up to level 10 feats. Adjust size. You can spend an action to change size to any of the available sizes you have. This is to make it so that when you're frickin' enormous, you can go back to being medium-sized so that you can get into people's houses and buildings. Or, you can just take over the land and demand everybody make all their buildings big enough for dragons. That's an option. Not really, but, I don't like this feat because it feels required if you're going to be an enormous dragon. Like, the size benefit doesn't give you enough to warrant, I can't go into any buildings anywhere or any dungeons anywhere because everything's too small for me. Like, I hate all of that. Bullying Frenzy. When you do your Draconic Frenzy, you can replace any of the strikes with a grapple, shove, or trip. It's the monk ability. And like the monk ability, it's good. Not fantastic, but it's good. And that's that. Deflecting Cloud. A creature targets you with a... Oh, Cloud Dragons, of course. A creature targets you with a ranged strike, and you're aware of the attack and aren't flat-footed. I hate that it's not a creature hits you. Flex your wing and call forth a billowing cloud of mist, making it extremely difficult for the attack to hit you. You become concealed. You also gain a +4 circumstance to AC against the attack. Unless it's from like a ballista or something. Unless you are huge or gargantuan, then you get it anyway. Because at that point, ballista bolts are small to you. That sort of gives you the idea that, well, then what are regular bolts to you? They shouldn't even be able to hurt you because they're so small. But, you know, balance. This is better than the than wing deflection. Because it gives you a +4 AC against the attack plus concealed. It's also better than the previous reaction that concealed. It's higher level and only for Cloud Dragons, but this makes Cloud Dragons better than all those other options. At least against ranged. So, yeah. That's great. It's too bad the concealment doesn't last like until the start of your next turn or anything. Because that would be crazy awesome. Delirium Breath. For Havoc Dragons, alter the pitch of your breath once per hour. Why, under prerequisites, don't they have requirements of limitations of once per hour? Why is the once per hour limit in the plain text of the feat? That's bad. I'll have to bring that up to Mark. He could easily fix that. I'm not sure if they're ever going to do reprints of these books, but we'll see. When you use Dragon Breath, change the effect from Sonic to instead require a will save against your class DC. On a failure, the creature is confused 1 round or 2 rounds on a crit failure. This version of Dragon Breath has the arcane emotion, enchantment, and mental traits. The duration is fairly short, but confused is crazy powerful. Or at least it can be. You would specifically have to target things that are away from you. But you also might hit multiple creatures. So hitting like 3 creatures and make them all confused for a round, that's pretty damn good. But there's still a modest chance that it will do nothing at all. So you give up chance of half damage for a chance of do nothing at all. So it is a bit risky. But confused can be pretty damn good. If you manage to have some distance to an enemy and the enemy are packed together and you confuse all of them, then they're just going to attack each other because they're the closest things to each other. Whereas if the enemy is closer to you when you hit them with this, they're still probably going to hit you. So if you can get good positioning on this, this could be amazing. Like, this ability could actually turn a fight. Most likely not going to, but it could. If you hit 3 targets with this, get one of them for 2 rounds and the other 2 for 1 round, that could easily change the course of a fight. So that's like an A plus feat right there. That's Havoc, all right. Yes. Dissolving Breath for Rift Dragons. Another meta breath. I love all these meta breath feats. I love them so much. They're so cool. After applying the damage from your dragon breath until the end of your next turn, creatures who fail their saving throw reduce their acid resistance by 5 and their resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, or all physical damage by 2. Creatures that critically fail instead reduce their resistances by 10 and 5. That's interesting. I don't think it lasts long enough. But stripping resistances from things, that's super cool. It'd be much better if instead of doing damage, this just put that effect on them and it was a persistent effect that they had to save out of. Like if it did persistent acid damage according to your breath weapon, and every time they triggered that damage, not even if they take that damage, but if every tick of that damage, it reduced their resistances, that would be fantastic. And I think a lot more thematic, and I don't think it would be broken either, because this does seem to be a little bit weak for what it does. Because it's only for one full turn. Like, reducing resistances by 5 or 2 for one turn, that's not really impressive. It's just not. It's not gonna... Like, if you might manage to get 20 or 30 extra damage out of it, which is, at level 10, maybe like one decent hit from a martial. So, I mean, it's not nothing, but it's also not fantastic. And also only works on stuff that actually has those resistances to begin with. I wonder, do you permanently reduce their resistances or only during the effect of this breath? I could actually see different GMs running that differently. So if this is a permanent effect, then this is fine. But if it's only... No, it isn't... Yeah, it says until the end of your next turn, they get their resistances dropped. So I think this is a little bit too weak, a little bit too situational, and the numbers are just too low. So I say this isn't a great feat. It could have been more powerful and still been good, I think. I think maybe one of the problems is when you think about a fighter that's able to get their breath weapon back every time they crit, they could be using these meta breaths more often. But I think it's a big problem in Pathfinder 2 of trying to balance around edge cases. It's like, oh, well, this could be when you hyper-focus on it above curve. And I'm like, but that's cool. That's the stuff people want. And it's not really, crazy above curve. It's just a little bit. But that's my opinion. I generally want everything, especially higher level. Once you hit level 10, from level 10 to 20, like, everything should be more powerful. Because it's just cooler. Freezing blood. An adjacent enemy deals piercing, slashing damage to you. This is just like the other one that we already did. And this one does frost damage. More white dragon stuff. Except for this one is actually more useful. Because it's just useful all the time. I don't know how thematic this ability is, though. Have white dragons ever had the flavor that their blood froze things? I mean, it's super cool, and I do think giving some of the traditionally weaker dragon types cooler abilities, like powerful abilities, is great. Because most of the time people are going to look at white dragons as like, oh, well, they're the dumbest of dragons and the most bestial. Why would I ever want to play that? It's like, well, because they have cool abilities now. That's why. But yeah, that's a cool ability. Every time you take slashing damage from something in your face, yeah, because it's still a reflex save. And a crit fail is slowed 1. So that's just good. That's just a great ability. If you're a white dragon, you definitely want to take that. Unless you're a caster. Ground Slam! Another white dragon thing. What? 2 white dragon things on the same level? Well, that's odd. You are on the ground or flying within 10 feet of the ground. You smash down into the ground and create a shockwave. 10-foot emanation, 3d6 damage, basic reflex. Crit fail is prone, and you get a free step. If you were flying, it increases to a 15 emanation and does d8s. Normally, that's where most abilities would stop. But the thing that makes this actually a not trash ability is that it scales up in damage. 12th level, the bludgeoning increases to 46, and 15, it's 5d6. And 18, it's 66. So you gotta wait until 18th level to have a near on-demand fireball that you do with your own body while you're flying. Well, if you're flying, it's d8s, so it's better than a fireball. But you have to fly, which means you have to spend an action getting up and then 2 actions smashing back down. So it's really terrible damage. Unless you are hitting a lot of enemies, that's really terrible damage for the actions that it requires. If you're just flying in and want to slam down, then it's mediocre. I think you probably get more use out of freezing blood at this level. But it's definitely not bad, and it's thematic as hell. Like, I would say there should just be a basic flying maneuver, which at some point I'm going to catalog all the maneuvers that I've been making up and put them in a book or something, because I do think that the flight system needs to have a lot more rules. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't like rules, blah, blah, blah. It's like, Pathfinder 2 is all about having rules and guidelines. You have to know how aquatic combat works to fight in the water. You have to know how climbing combat works to do combat while you're climbing. Because, yes, there are a bunch of rules and restrictions for those. Why should flying not have some too? But mostly just maneuvers. There should definitely be a maneuver, dive bomb, that does this. But, you hurt yourself if you're up too high. I think that's thematic and super cool. Lashing Tail for black dragons. Once per minute. Which, that sucks. Creature within your reach uses a strike action or attempts a skill check. And you get to hit them, and if you hit, they get a -2 to the roll. Like, that sucks as a once a minute. Used on strikes, it would probably be too powerful if you did it every round, but at this level, I would say, yeah, why not? And it's only black dragons. So I don't know. This isn't great. If you don't have any other good reactions, or you wanted to make a very specific build that was shutting things down, it's alright. Laughing Gas Breath for Harlequin Dragons. Success is creature begins chuckling at inopportune moments, giving a -2 status penalty on all checks. as made of part of a reaction for 1 round? That's trash. The creature is plagued with uncontrollable laughter. It can't use reactions for 2 rounds. That's great. Sometimes. Crit failure, the creature is completely overcome by laughter, and it can't use reactions for 2 rounds, and is slowed 1 for 2 rounds. Which is great. I don't know, this is not a fantastic ability. Like, I get that there's a spell somewhere that does pretty much this exact same thing. So, having it as an alternate to your breath weapon is alright. But you're not going to get a lot of use out of it most of the time. Like, that success thing is... Wow, that's terrible. You would probably almost never get any use out of that. Like, I cannot think of a monster that does a check as a reaction. Well, actually, all checks are like all rolls, isn't it? I think so. I think that means it gives a -2 to hit for, like, attack of opportunity and stuff. So viewed that way, it's not bad. Because this whole thing is about stopping reactions. So it would make sense if it was specifically really good against attack reactions and stuff. So as an anti-reaction ability, it's alright. Like, a lot of people... It's like, hey... Everybody who's complaining that Maguses are trash and unplayable because, oh, they cast spells through weapons, and yet spells trigger attacks of opportunity, and that ruins the class. Be a Harlequin Dragon and shut up. But yeah, it'll be good for that. Stops reactions. There you go. Fixes a problem. Lingering Bite. If you hit with a devastating bite, your foe takes 2d8 persistent damage of the same type. That increases to 3d8 at 18th level. That's alright. As long as you don't have fire damage, it's alright. Because once you get a greater fire rune, that does like 2d10 fire damage. So if you hit with 2d10 fire damage, plus then also do 2d8 bite damage, then that's a lot. That's a significant persistent damage for, like, doing 1 attack. You have to crit with it for the fire rune, but, you know. It's decent. Lunar Breath. Change your breath weapon into doing Dazzle and Outlined with Moonlight for a minute. On a success. Dazzled for 1 round and Outlined in Moonlight for 1 minute. That can't be concealed. That is good. Like, I understand that you could easily see that as, oh, well, how many things are going to try and be concealed? It is like, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised at how many pain-in-the-ass enemies can be concealed just to be pains in the asses. So even the success on that can be useful. Dazzled versus anything. That's great. And Moonlight for a minute. That's 2 abilities in one. One of them very niche specific, but very powerful in that specific niche. And then a general ability that's just generally good. Failure is as success except creatures dazzled for a minute. Crit is confused for a round and dazzled for a minute. Yeah, that's just a good breath weapon. Just good. Like, I like everything about that. Mushroom Burst. For toadstools, of course. An adjacent creature deals piercing... Oh, this is going to be the same thing, isn't it? Yep. Poison blood. Seems kind of weird for a toadstool dragon to have poison blood. Oh. And it's against a fortitude save. That sucks. If they crit, which they're never going to do, they also get sickened 1. So this is a bad ability. Like, if you can find one of the, like, 5 or 10 monsters that have bad fort saves that are probably casters and somehow get them to cut you so you can get them to maybe be sickened and take a little bit of damage, then this would be pretty cool. But otherwise, I think that fort save alone ruins this ability. Because the other 2 we've found were both reflex. So that's unfortunate. And I think it's just because that's a decent rider. Sickened is really hard to get rid of, but things aren't going to critically fail their fort save. They just aren't. Even if they hit you once or twice a round, and you could use this reaction twice a round, you're probably still not going to get that crit failure in a reliable fashion. Obliteration Bite for Void Dragons. Corruptive Bite. That your foe takes any negative damage, and the attack brings them to 0 hit points. They must fortitude save or be disintegrated. Alrighty. On the one hand, mechanically, this is a absolutely useless garbage ability. This does nothing for you. In the vast majority of games, this is going to do nothing for you. Thematically, this is badass. This is top tier badass. Void dragons are generally evil anyway, because they are corruption incarnate. So killing something and then immediately just disintegrating it, that is badass as hell. That is super evil, super terrifying. Like, if you had that and then, like, you're next or something, I would definitely give you a bonus to that demoralize. Because, hot damn, that's twisted. But for most people, probably not going to do a lot. Piezoelectric Shock for Amber Dragons. An adjacent creature deals damage to you with a melee attack, or a creature deals damage to you with a melee unarmed attack. So this is slightly different than the other ones, because the other ones were slashing or piercing damage. They had to cut you and make you bleed. This is just get hit. You got sand on your electric sand on you. So anything that hits you, you deal damage to them. Reflex save, that's excellent. And your level in damage. This is just better than all the other ones. If the triggering attack was a metal weapon, they take -1 penalty to their saving throw. And if the creature is made of metal, like an iron golem, they take a -2 to their saving throw. On a crit failure, they're also flat-footed. Okay, the rider's pretty garbage, but the core ability of this one, this is the best reaction on hit ability. This is the best one so far. Just period. It's the best. That's great. Triggers on more damage. Reflex. And there's negatives for things that use metal, which, if they're people, humanoids, and even like giants and stuff, they still use, well, some. Most use clubs, but, you know, there's a non-insignificant number of things you could fight that would use metal weapons. So this is just amazing. Ravager's Camouflage. If you're a green dragon, you get camouflage. As long as you're, well, yeah, camouflage, which works outdoors. Now, when I read camouflage, the intention of camouflage to me seems to be, hey, as long as you're outside, you can always be sneaking and hiding. But when you look at the rules for sneaking, it literally says if you are not behind cover when you finish your sneak, you are observed. And I do not see anything in camouflage that specifically says you get to ignore that part of sneak. It just says you can sneak while you're being observed. So it's like, cool, you can move unobserved, but then if you stop, you're observed again. Like, I don't think that's the intention of it, but that's how it reads, and I hate it. So, if you have a GM who's going to let you use camouflage to just have early, legendary sneak, then I say this is amazing. Otherwise, useless. Frickin' trash. Like, you'd have to make sure that you have a good move speed so that you can always get behind some sort of cover. And you need to be small or medium sized so you can actually get into cover. And there's so much wrong with it. It makes me angry. Slime breath for apocalypse dragons. Change your breath to do draining slime. Level 10 disease. Target can't recover from the drained condition from draining slime until the disease is cured. Does drain 1 for a day, drain 2 for a day, and then drain 3. Nope, I'm reading that wrong. Stage 1, drained 1. Stage 2, drained 3. That's a big jump. Stage 3, drained 4 and slowed 1 for the whole day. And stage 4, drained 4, fatigued and slowed 2. And then stage 5, 5 days after you catch this disease, you die from it. And you don't just die, you collapse into a puddle of foul slime. And they need to make a fortitude save. -1 status penalty on saving throws against the slime until they contract it, or for 1 day, whichever comes first. Failure is they get the slime disease, and crit failure is slime disease at stage 2. Mechanically, this is useless. In most campaigns, this is going to be absolutely useless to you. Unless you somehow have a reoccurring enemy of some sort. Thematically, though, again, apocalypse dragons tend to be another fairly evil type of dragon. This is brutal. This is absolute brutal. You get this disease on somebody, and then you just tell them, is like, do what I want, or you're gonna die. Or you just hit somebody with it, and it's like, oh, you're already dead. Bye. That's brutal stuff. Freaking brutal. Just die. It melts you, like, from the inside out, I would say. It just melts you. Super evil. Slowing gas breath for copper dragons. Fortitude save, that sucks. Slowed 1 for a round, slowed 2 for a round, and that's it. That's trash. Wow. It's a line, because that's what Copper Dragon Breath is. So you're going to hit 1, maybe 2 targets for slowed 1 on a failure. Because you're not going to get the crit failure. So most of the time this does nothing, and sometimes it does slowed 1 for a round. That's pretty terrible. It's worse than like casting slow on something. Yeah. It is a higher level, lower quality slow that you can do once per 1d4 rounds. That's bad. Spirit Eater for etheric dragons. Your devastating bites can target or affect creatures projecting its consciousness. So you can hit ethereal stuff, astral stuff, all that kind of cool thing. Yeah, you can bite ethereal things. I mean, the name is cool. It sounds cool. Like, there's literally Umber dragons and Crypt dragons, like, do that kind of stuff normally. So having another dragon get that at level 10 is kind of like... And it's only for your bite attacks. I don't know. It seems kind of low-powered. I mean, it's decent. But it's just a little bit too high in level, I think. Stupefying Breath for astral dragons. Stupefied 1 for a round, which is not great. Will save, which is good. Except for this is stupefied, so it's bad. Failure is stupefied 2 for a round and stupefied 1 for a minute. That's interesting. Crit fail is stupefied 3 for a round and stupefied 2 for a minute. All right. we got a problem here. Will save to do an anti-will ability. Stupefied is an anti-caster ability. Casters are going to, like 99% of the chance, have good or great will save. So this ability does not seem to be good. If it was a reflex save, that would be awesome. But because it's not, I say it's not a good ability. It's mediocre at best, which is unfortunate. Sweeping Scrawl. Oh. Remember when I said that Inscribed Glyph could have an upgrade to make it better, to be used more often? Well, you can't use it more often. But this is an AoE. Inscribe a disorienting glyph against each enemy within your melee reach. So if you make yourself gigantic, be a humongous, gigantic dragon, if you can hit 4 creatures with this, then at the very least, your party's going to get some effect of flat-footed out of it. Unless all the enemies go between you and the rest of your party, which is unlikely. So you're going to get some flat-footed out of this. And the enemies are going to spend actions to get rid of it. So if you hit 2 enemies, you've spent 3 actions for the enemies to lose 2. It's not great. 3 for 3 is still mediocre. But if you can hit 4 enemies, you're getting great return on this. That is a cool ability. Vacuum Breath for Vortex Dragons. You change your breath weapon to be a Fortitude save. That sucks. Creature is pulled 5 towards you. That's trash. Pulled 10 towards you on a failure. And if it was within 10, it is flat-footed for a round. Crit fail is pulled 20. If it was within 20, it's flat-footed. And you can make an automatic jaw strike. Huh. You have to use your reaction for it, though, which is slightly unfortunate. I will say this is a pretty cool ability, but in the general scheme of Pathfinder 2, push, pull, and forced movements abilities are highly underpowered. Like, I understand that the general push ability, you push somebody back 5 feet. That's all right. To me, that is you just shoving your hand into somebody's chest and you knock them back a little bit. Every other effect in the entire friggin' game that does a push effect or force movement or anything, well, especially a push or pull effect, needs to be like 10 to 40 feet. Like, force push, friggin', backhand a bitch friggin' 10 feet away from you. It needs to have some power to it. Like, knocking somebody 5 foot back is so weak because it's just a step. It's just one step. They spend an action to step back. Nothing friggin' happened. You wasted one of their actions, and it didn't even look that cool. If you knock somebody 10, 15 foot back, they have to spend a whole move action getting up to you again, which might trigger attacks of opportunity, and is just so much more useful and so much cooler. So I think the failure effect is decent. The crit failure is awesome, but I think it's... because it's fortitude save, you're never going to get it, so this ability is kind of bad. Like, it's a little bit of crowd control because you can hit multiple targets with it to suck them all into you, but I think the only reason why I accept, these numbers is because it's multi-target. Otherwise, I would say, nope, screw you, it's terrible. Just because I think all push-pull movement stuff needs to be better. Like, you just look at the Matrix, and it's like, yeah, they're just punching people, and it's knocking people 5, 10 feet back into friggin' stuff. Like, that's the kind of stuff you want in higher-level games. Vexing Wings. Tumult Dragon with a wing attack. And Draconic Frenzy. Anytime you hit a creature with 2 or more wing strikes in the same Draconic Frenzy, the creature becomes flat-footed. That's pretty bad. Like, if you're using Frenzy, you're going to bite and then wing. Hitting with your second and third attack just to get flat-footed at the end of those, that's pretty garbage. Like, to the end of your next turn is decent-ish. But I would say they should have to do a save. And success is flat-footed to your next turn. Failure, flat-footed for 2 rounds. Something like that, because when are you ever going to hit with your second and third attack to get use out of this? Or to even make it feel worthwhile, because you need to reliably flat-foot people if you want to be effective in combat. So, yeah. Wave Breath for Cerulean Dragons. Fortitude save right off the bat. That's bad. We got more pushing. 5-foot push. Trash. 10-foot push. And if they hit a wall, they take a d6 of damage for every remaining 5 feet. So 2d6 of damage if it was against a wall and you hydro sprayed it. At level 10, that's trash. That's absolute trash damage. Like, holy crap, that's trash damage. Your regular breath weapon would do a lot more damage than that. And this doesn't scale up like your breath weapon would. Crit fail, 20 feet. Same thing. I would say double all these numbers, and you might have a decent ability. But as is, thematically awesome, mechanically garbage. Ancient Size. You get huge. And increase your reach. That's awesome. It's just awesome. Big Dark. It's awesome. Blight Coils. You have to have Constrict and Slime Breath. So a non-insignificant cost of entry. Your coils are infected with the same pestilent slime as your breath, allowing you to expose enemies to a fortitude save. That sucks. Huh. They get the slime breath effect whenever you grapple people. Yeah, whenever you use Constrict, they also have to save against your slime breath. That's awesome. Like, slime breath isn't really all that useful. It's the death stuff and the super evil stuff. But that's a super cool ability. You might not get all that much effect out of it because fortitude plus, slow damage, but super cool, super evil. Brine Spit. For brine dragons, imagine that. Creature you observe within 15 feet attempts a concentrate action, and you get to disrupt it. Basic reflex save. On a critical failure, the concentrate action is disrupted. So it has to be within 15 feet of you. You spend a reaction, and it only does something if they crit fail a reflex. That's pretty terrible. Like, that's just pretty terrible. I thought that was going to be cool for a second. Like, a success. Like, them rolling a failure should, if not disrupt, then at least put some sort of negative into it, Make them roll a succeed at a flat five check or something. Bullying Bite. When you use Devastating Bite against something you have grabbed or restrained, you deal additional damage. Equal to the number of weapon damage dice plus the number of additional dice from Devastating Bite. Huh. That's kind of cool that you grab stuff and then do extra damage. So 5 additional damage at level 12 and 7 additional damage for the 3-action bite. I mean, 5 additional damage is pretty damn good. For just the cost of having grabbed something already. Like, if I could definitely see making a grappler type dragon that has like coiling frenzy so that you can hit something, grapple them, and then make a bullying bite. That would be pretty damn cool. Commanding Breath for Edict Dragons. Will save, that's good. Success is basically a crit. That's really, really bad. Failure for the first action on its next turn. The creature must use a single action to do as you command. Failure is all actions. Alright, like most of the replacement breath stuff, success does nothing is a crit success. The failure effect is still pretty bad, because I don't think most GMs would allow you to say, oh, strike your friend. But this doesn't give any limitations. It doesn't even say it's mimicking a spell. It just says it gives you a list of what it can do. Okay. Choose whether the creature will Approach you, run away, release what they're holding, drop prone, or stand in place. I mean, a 2-action ability that they have to fail just to get prone, which is the best thing probably out of here. It's pretty bad. The crit failure is decent, but I wouldn't say this is a reliably good in any way. But it is will save, so it actually might be. You have a better chance of getting your failure effect on this one than I think any of the other replacement breaths. So it's probably one of the better replacement breaths. Dragon Chill. Silver and white dragons. You do damage around you. If anything standing within 10 feet of you takes 3d6 cold damage. That scales up to 46 at 16th and 5d6 at 20th. It's just automatic damage for everything around you. It's stupid good. It's just stupid good. And then the same thing for red dragons. Except fire. Stupid good. Less good because fire damage is more resist by things, and you can't specifically use any of your things that lower resists for this. But it's still good. I would even say, if you wanted to really be thematic with it, you can say that both of these abilities actually do their effects to the environment. When you have this, since you can turn it on and off with an action, I would say if a dragon is walking around with these abilities on, silver and white dragons are freezing everything around them, leaving paths of ice and like frozen vegetation and stuff. And red dragons are literally setting the frickin' world on fire with every step. That is thematic and would make you feel like a badass. An electrical aura for bronze dragons. Same thing. Same cool. 'Cause it's awesome. Not a lot of things have electrical resist. I think it's one of the least resisted damage types in the game. Entropic breath for rift or tumult dragons. Meta breath that lowers objects' hardness equal to twice your level. That's interesting. Will allow you to break walls and stuff, I guess. That's cool. It's cool. I mean, that's it. Lingering breath. Fan-fricking-tastic ability. You use your breath weapon, and then it stays there for 1d4 rounds, which is the same 1d4 that it takes your breath to recharge. So that basically means your breath weapon is always in effect. In some way, it is, once you use your breath weapon, it will be either available to you or on the field at all times. That is crazy awesome. Make sure you have a team that's built to move and force movement and stuff, or crowd control to keep enemies in areas, and this is just stupid good ability. Freaking amazing. I wonder. No, it's a meta breath, so you can't do deep breath with it. Unfortunate. That would be too good. Liquefy. Sea dragons. You would take fire damage or physical damage. That is a modestly broad trigger. You transform yourself partially into water, gaining resistance equal to your level against physical damage and fire damage against the triggering effect. That's just good. That's just freaking real good. Like, all physical damage, your level to resist. Not like half your level to resist. That's good. This is good. Magic resist. +1 status to spells. Like, even when you consider the whole paradigm of Pathfinder 2, where a +1 is really good, when I see stuff like, hey, you get a +1 bonus to saving throws against magic, I'm like, I do not give a flying fuck. Like, a +1 is not worth a feat to me. If that was a +2, I'd be like, oh yeah. Especially at 12th level, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's a pretty damn good ability. But a +1, no. Just no. Especially when it's supposed to represent, you being actually noticeably resistant to magic. If you want something to be like a thing people can notice about you as a trait, it can't be something that's going to work like 10% of the time. Because that's not reliable or noticeable about you. Like, if you were trying to learn to juggle and you succeeded 1 out of 10 times, like, nobody's going to say you're a good juggler. That's not something anyone would ever notice about you. And all of these +1s, that means it's going to be useful at worst 1 out of 20 times, and at best 2 out of 20 times. So it's not good. I understand, in the wider scheme of things, you don't want a lot of stacking or whatever, but if you want something to be a thing that is noticeable about a character, it definitely needs to be more than a +1. I mean, make it a reaction that gives you a +4 or something. I don't know. Mental static aura, another damaging aura for astral dragons. This one does mental damage. And a will save. That's pretty fantastic. Overwhelming Spice for Vermilion Dragons. When a foe gets a burning spice from your breath weapon into eyes, nose, or other sensitive areas, it is stunned by the overwhelming burning sensation. When they crit fail against your breath, they're stunned 1. I mean, that's an alright ability. As a free thing, whenever something crit fails against your breath, which probably isn't going to happen often, it's stunned. That's alright. It's decent. Paralyzing gas breath for silver dragons. Fortitude save, that sucks. Failure paralyzed for a round, or 2 rounds on a crit failure. Alright. So, as a breath replacement, success is crit success, which that really, really, really sucks, especially for Fort, because that means you probably have like a less than 50% chance of this ever doing anything, which sucks on a thing that used to be fairly reliable. Like, dragons who have a second breath weapon, those breath weapons were usually pretty damn powerful, but they were usually just not, anti-combat stuff for good dragons. Disarming kind of stuff. End a combat without fighting. But for this one specifically, compared to all the others, paralyzed is stupid good. So I would say the failure effect on this one is probably the best out of any of the replacements. And the crit failure, paralyzed for 2 rounds, is like, well, say goodbye. You're probably going to be dead by the time that's over. Because that's immediately 2 rounds of combat that you do nothing. You just lost 2 turns. And I don't even think you get reactions. So, you get hit by this, paralyzed for a round. Even if you go right after the silver dragon that hit you with this, you wouldn't get any of your actions back. You wouldn't get your reaction back. So even though you lost your turn and you're still awake and capable of doing anything, You don't have any actions or reactions, so you can't actually do anything. So that is super good. You just really got to do the bump things in your favor to get a fortitude save to actually fail. Peacemaker for Bliss Dragons. Once per minute. So once per combat, basically. You swipe with your claw to startle a foe and then infuse the energy of Nirvana to attempt to calm them down so you can try to reason with them. This sounds sort of like you slap them in the face to get their attention. They're like, hey, calm down. Calm down. You're having an episode. Calm down. That's so comedic. to have a dragon do that. Especially if you were like gigantic or huge. That is just hilarious. A will save, which is pretty damn good. Incapacitation, that sucks. But success is you calm them, they get a -1 to attack rolls. Failure is any other emotion effects that would affect the creature are suppressed, and the creature can't use hostile actions for a minute. Holy balls. If the target is subject to hostility from any other creature, the effect ends. Additionally, on each of your turns after the turn you use Peacemaker, if you don't spend at least one action on that turn to attempt to establish diplomatic solution with the target, the effect ends. Okay. And then crit failure is as failure, but hostility doesn't end the effect. The effect still ends if you stop attempting to... Wow. Alright, that critical failure is kind of dumb. Not because it isn't powerful, it's stupid powerful. But that allows a Bliss Dragon who is supposed to... You know, the whole thing about this, it's called Peacemaker. They're supposed to be about, finding alternate solutions to combat. This allows you to spend one action a turn just calming them down. Basically doing a... I keep forgetting the word. What is the effect? Starts with an F. Damn it, I keep forgetting it. But, the charm effect, the garbage one that breaks whenever you do hostile actions, but you can keep hitting them. Like, you can go, hey, buddy, snap out of it, and then stab them twice, and they can't do anything about it. And as long as you spend an action every round, you will kill them or drop them to zero health, and they can't do anything about it. They can't do hostile actions. That's crazy, just bonkers. The failure effect alone, lasting for a minute, is super good. And Fascinate, that's the term. Fascinate is like the worst condition you could ever do. But this is how Fascinate should work, because it's the target has to be targeted from the hostility, not its allies. So you could spend one action every round calming this creature down, and it couldn't take hostile actions while you wipe the rest of its group out. This is a really cool ability. Really cool. Like, thematically, it's hilarious. Mechanically, it is powerful. This is just really good. Damn. Repulsion gas breath for bronze dragons. Replacement will save. Flee on a failure for a round or 2 rounds on a crit failure. Huh. I mean, it's great for crowd control. because when you think about fleeing, for 1 round, that costs you 2 rounds. Because you're going to use 3 actions to move away, then you have to use 3 actions just to get the frig back where the hell you were. So, failure is lose 2 rounds to just moving the frig about, unless you have some ranged options. Crit failures lose 4 frickin' turns. The battle will be over by the time you get back. So that's really good. Rotting Breath for Crypt Dragons. Breath Replacement. Fortitude save, that's not good. Success is drained 1. But the drain condition lasts after a minute. That don't matter. You just drain them. That's great. You can do this at will. Nope, once per hour. There it is. Still pretty good. Failure, drain 2. Crit fail, drain 4. That's a good ability. It's not fantastic, but it's pretty damn good. Seeking Breath for Paradise Dragons. If your next action is to use the Dragon Breath at 1 point during the line after hitting a creature you know is chaotic or evil, you can change the line trajectory up to 90 degrees for its remaining length. Wow. That's cool. Like, it's not amazing, but that is cool. Has to be a chaotic or evil creature, and you have to know that it's chaotic or evil, which is stupid. I would say you don't get to control the breath. It's just when it hits a chaotic or evil creature, it then bounces and redirects to the next closest target. But that's cool. Lines generally suck, so things that allow lines to actually hit different targets are good. Shadow Breath, Umbral Dragon, Replacement, once per hour, Fortitude save, oof. Success is enfeebled for 1 round, that's bad. Failure is enfeebled 2 for a round and enfeebled 1 for a minute, that's decent. Crit is blinded for a round and enfeebled 3 for a round and enfeebled 2 for 1 minute. It's mediocre. It's not that great. Sleeping Gas Breath, Brass or Dream Dragons. Once per hour, Breath Replacement. Fortitude save, that's not good. On a failure, the creature falls unconscious for 1d6 rounds or for 1 minute on a crit fail. It basically fascinates because if they hear anything, they wake up. Incapacitate, sleep. This is mediocre. I mean, if you're sneaking in somewhere and you need to put some lower level guards to sleep, yes, this is phenomenal. This is the perfect thing for that situation. In most other situations, it's decent at best. They'll fall asleep. You or your group will attack somebody that will immediately, automatically wake them up. And then they'll have to pick their gear up and stand up back up. It's alright. It could be really cool and thematic, or it could just be decent. I mean, knocking somebody down and making them drop their stuff is pretty good. It's more than just regular prone, so it's alright. Stunning Venom Breath for Forest Dragons. When anything fails, it's save against your breath weapon. Becomes stunned 1. It's a mediocre benefit to your breath. It's not going to trigger often. It's all right. Suffocating breath for void dragons. Replacement effect. Fortitude save, that's bad. Success is creature is momentarily short of breath. It's enfeebled 1. That's meh. Failure, the creature can't breathe and the airflow to its muscles is restricted for 2 rounds. During that time, it is enfeebled 1 and must hold its breath, making it difficult for it to speak and cast spells. Okay. The failure effect making it so that it doesn't even really make it so that they can't cast spells. It just makes it so it loses the rest of its air. So then on round 2, they would suffocate and take suffocation damage. So it's kind of cool because it forces them to make a choice, but I don't think the suffocation damage is going to be worth not casting your spell, especially as a monster. Critical failure. Creature can't breathe. How long? This effect a failure except they last for 1 minute. But they get a save every round. That's dumb. Every creature can hold their breath for more than a minute. Like, every one. Like, you get a number of rounds equal to twice your con mod or something. Like, that's going to be 2 to 4 rounds. That's a combat. So there's no need to give them free saves every round. This is almost a pretty cool ability. It's really thematic and interesting, but it falls short. Yeah. Sweltering heat for underworld dragons. Any creature that ends its turn within 10 feet of you must make a fortitude save, or they are fatigued as long as they remain in the aura. Fatigued isn't really all that powerful of a condition, so this is mediocre at best. Temporal breath for time dragons. Replacement breath. Failure spins things into time. And they become flat-footed for a round, which is mediocre. Failure is flat-footed and sickened 1, which is fantastic. Sickened is just a great condition to do, and you can hit multiple targets with that. So getting sickened 1 on 2 or 3 targets is pretty damn good. Crit fail is flat-footed for a round and sickened 1. So it's got the same effect as failure, except for they disappear for 2 rounds. It's interesting. It is very, very crowd control heavy. So this is a pretty cool ability. You might not want that target to disappear for 2 rounds, but it's still cool. Weakening gas breath for gold. Replacement breath. Success is enfeebled 1, not good. Failure is enfeebled 3, pretty damn decent. And crit is enfeebled 4. It's alright. Like, there's still a modest amount of things that enfeebled just won't do anything against. But a lot of creatures are going to be strength-based, so it's decent. Blizzard for white dragons. Whenever you use your breath weapon, you surround yourself with a momentary blizzard for a round in a 40-foot emanation. That's pretty damn big. Any creature who ends their turn within the aura takes 4d6 cold damage with a basic reflex. Increases to 5d6 at level 20. So, sub-fireball damage in a 20-foot emanation around you every time you use your breath. Additionally, any creature in the blizzard is concealed by the snow and treats other creatures as concealed. See, I hate those effects. And finally, the blizzard is difficult terrain for all creatures attempting to fly through it except you. That is cool. Overall, the abilities, it's alright. Like a 40-foot emanation, you're gonna hit friendlies with that. And concealed, like all concealing effects in the game that are like mists or like environmental concealing things are garbage abilities. Because it's like, hey, the enemy can't see anybody, but nobody can see them. It's like, well, that doesn't help anybody. It just hurts everyone. There's no upside to this ability. So, I hate that sort of stuff. But this is alright. Coiling Frenzy for Imperial Dragons. You get to strike, and then you do a claw strike and a tail strike, whereas the regular Draconic Frenzy is a bite and then 2 other of your lesser attacks. This is 2 lesser attacks. But then you get an automatic grapple, which is pretty interesting. It sucks that you have to wait till like level 14 if you want to make a really powerful grapple type ability. Yeah, it's either strike hits, not just like the tail or anything. So it's cool. It just comes online a little bit too late, I think. Draconic Reflexes. This is stupid, stupid, stupid good. You get an extra reaction every turn to do Bite of Opportunity, Lashing Tail, Twisting Tail, or Wing Deflection. That is stupid, stupid good. Like, you get it later than everybody else who gets their, bonus free reactions, but be a champion or a fighter and pick this up, it's like, oh, hey, you have 3+ reactions around. So good. Fragmented Strike. Vortex Dragons with Warping Presence. When you warp space to hinder your enemies, you also do the same. Use those same distortions to twist your own body. You strike out at stuff. They get flat-footed against the attack. So it makes everything within your aura flat-footed to you when you strike them, I think. Like, that's cool, I guess. Gather Frenzy. Draconic Frenzy or Coiling Frenzy. This is also a potentially super cool ability. It's like a meta strike ability. I think this is the second one in the game, because there was one for the power attack bite that you could charge up. This one charges up your frenzies, and it makes them do more damage. If the next action is Draconic or Coiling Frenzy, all the strikes you make gain a status bonus to damage rolls equal to the number of weapon damage dice, and they ignore an amount of the target's resistance equal to your level. That is really good. Like, Draconic Frenzy, you spend 3 actions, get 3 attacks. they ignore They ignore resistance up to your level and get a status bonus to damage. That's just so powerful. Super good. Gleaming armor for sovereign dragons. And you have to be wearing armor, so you can't be a diehard or have any of those lower level feats that turn your scales into armor. Makes your armor glow, and you gain a +2 status bonus to AC and resistance to all energy damage equal to your level. It's once per hour. Each enemy within 20-foot emanation must succeed at a fortitude save, and it lasts until the end of your next turn. So, like, once an hour for one turn, you get level resist to all energy and +2 status bonus AC. Like, that's really powerful. I'm like, I want to dislike it for some reason because it's only once an hour, but like, if you want to make a Nova powerful ability, this is it. This is like one of the best, once a day, once per hour kind of abilities there are. Resist your level to all elemental damage. Well, all energy damage. Not even just elemental, but all non-physical damage, basically. And a +2 status bonus to AC. And each enemy within 20 foot has to save fortitude or be dazzled. Like, for one round. This is an amazingly good defensive ability. Like, if you're being a champion or a fighter or something, and you just run into a pack of, like, 4 at level or +1 enemies, you're just like, boom, shining armor, come at me. It's good. So damn good. Hindering shards for edict dragons. Whenever you use your breath weapon, you can leave behind a shards of words. The ground within the area of your breath weapon is difficult terrain to creatures other than you, as well as hazardous terrain that deals 3 piercing damage for each square they go through. For 1 round. It's alright. It's alright. Like, 3 damage per step. That's not a lot, but yeah, it's just not. If that was twice that amount of damage, maybe. But like at level 14, things are gonna have like close to, if not more than 200 health. So making them take 9 or 10 damage from a full move action to get through your breath weapon. Like, the only way this would be really good is if you were using widen breath or deep breath to double the range and then have them actually walk over like 60 feet of hazardous terrain. Other than that, I think the damage is probably too low to be really useful, especially for level 14 feet. Miasma for green dragons. An breath add-on. For 1 round, any creature who ends their turn within 40 feet of you takes poison damage. And does concealed, and you can see through the concealment. Well, that's better than the ice one from white dragons, because you can see through the concealment. It doesn't have the anti-flying stuff on it. But free concealment to everything within 40 feet of you whenever you use your breath weapon for 1 round? That's alright. Not fantastic, but that's alright. Myth Breast for cloud dragons. Breath add-on. Creatures in the mist are concealed, and other creatures are concealed to them. I hate that so much. As it is a mist, your heritage ability allows you to see through it. That's just a reminder. So it means you don't get the bad part of that. After effects duration is 1d4 rounds, using the same d4 as your recharge. That's actually pretty good. Like, it sucks for your team, but you could keep doing this. And you're basically just casting Obscuring Mist every time you use your breath weapon. Except for you can see through it. Like, that's great for you. Bad for everybody else. But I mean, it's better than other abilities that do similar. So that's pretty good. If you had a Cloud and Silver Dragon kind of team up, then that could be really cool. I think Silver Dragons get the ability to see through mist. Obliterating Breath for Rift Dragons. Once per day. That's really, really bad. You amp it up. It's Meta Breath. Changes the damage type to Force. Change to Align. Change to Fortitude. That sucks. And change the dice to D8s instead of D4s or D6s. It automatically uses Deep Breath, even if you don't have the feat. That's impressive. And it doesn't account against using Deep Breath. That's good. And if anything is reduced to 0 hit points in it, it turns into fine powder. But its gear remains. And it destroys walls of force. Or any force constructs. Ooh, that is cool. Alright. Even as a once-a-day ability, this is actually pretty good. I mean, it's not fantastic, but it's pretty cool. Painful Strikes for Brine Dragons. Whenever you frenzy to do 3 strikes, make them do a Fortitude save or become stunned. Just like Stunning Frenzy. I don't... don't understand. You get Stunning Frenzy with all your attacks, even when they're not frenzies. I mean, I guess that's alright. It's a really weird way to put all of that, but that's what it does. It makes it so that any attack you make at all times could stun, which is alright. You always like stunning, so why not? Rebuking Breath for Paradise Dragons. This is an add-on. On a failed saving throw, your Rebuking Breath pushes a creature 5 foot back along the line, or 10 feet on a crit fail. This is hot garbage. Even if you doubled those numbers, I would say it's not great. I just think pushback stuff should be a lot stronger. Just so much stronger. Because you're never going to get that. So this is just like... there could easily be times where this does nothing. 5 foot would do nothing. If they have reach or something... Like, you think about a creature, a huge creature. It is going to have like a 20-foot reach. So if you want to get into melee with it, and you're not a huge creature, you're going to have to get within 5 feet of it. And then if you push it back 5 or 10 feet, you're still within its reach, so you literally did nothing. And that's why I hate pushback stuff. Because the higher level you get, the less basic reach is worth anything. And the less a 5-foot knockback is worth anything. And that irritates me a lot. Sedating Sparks for Bliss Dragon. Adds electricity to your breath weapon. For 1 round, any creature that fails its save against your dragon breath takes 2d4 electricity damage each time it attempts a strike. And the damage increases to 2d4 if the strike is against an unconscious target. But it decreases if it's to 1d4 if it's non-lethal damage. That's pretty cool. As just an add, like the damage is low. So at level 14, that damage probably isn't going to really do anything. But as a free add-on, it's like, hey, if you're a multi-attacking thing, like a Hydra or a Merilith or something, and oh, you just make 8 attacks against my friend. It's like, well, I hate to tell you, you just took 16d4 of damage because you're hitting my friend. That's pretty cool. Vortex for bronze and sea dragons. Stir up water. When you are underwater, the area within a 10-foot emanation of you that's within the same body of water is difficult terrain for swimming creatures that don't have the water trait, other than yourself. 10-foot emanation, that sucks. 10-foot difficult terrain for other creatures to swim around you. I mean, that's alright, but that's way too high in level for what that does. And like a lot of swimming things are probably going to have more swim speed than that's ever going to be worth anything. I don't know. It seems really mediocre. Compared to a lot of the other stuff we've been looking over, that's really mediocre at this level. Aura of Fear. Here we go. This lets you do... basically gives you your frightening presence. Except for much weaker. Any foe that enters the area must attempt a will save against your class DC or become frightened 1 or 2 on a critical save. It then becomes temporarily immune for 24 hours. So you get 1 chance to do frightened 1 or 2. It's fairly weak. I think most frightened abilities in the whole game is pretty weak because... like, if something's going to scare you, it's going to scare you for more than, like, 6 seconds. Like, if something is truly, like, holy crap, this thing could kill me, it could reach into my chest and rip my soul from my body kind of fear, then that's not going to be, like, a thing that just, hey, 6 seconds later, I'm over it. But that's just a general system issue I have, and there's ways to fix it. But you shouldn't have to. Blasting Bite. Another upgrade for Devastating Bite. And an automatic upgrade as well. And it explodes when you bite stuff. A bite-splosion, if you will. Fortitude save and successes knock them 5 foot back. Failures knock them 10 feet back. Crit failures knock them 20 feet back or 30 feet if you spent 3 actions. Why do the other ones not get affected by the 3 action version? That's kind of dumb. As always, I don't think the pushback is far enough, but I will say it's fine because this is a free ability. You just decide to do this. So it's alright. It's too high in level for what it does because it doesn't add any damage or anything. It's just like, hey, you can knock stuff back sometimes. It's alright. Lashing Constrict. When you constrict a foe, you can thwack them with your tail. Oh, this is just like collateral thrash. So another foe takes your constrict damage with a reflex save. Yeah, this is literally collateral thrash. The problem with constrict and collateral thrash, so constrict and lashing constrict, is that you don't have the barbarian's instinct damage bonus, which is the only thing that makes those abilities worth anything. So, as I said with constrict, its damage is not high enough. But otherwise, both of those are cool abilities. Ravager's Wings. You get a fly speed equal to your land speed. It's cool that you can get flight through basically class feats, but it will always be a problem that PC dragons do not have anywhere near the flight speed of regular dragons. That's just an issue. And it will always be there. Because balance, or whatever. Scintillating Aura for crystal dragons. This is an aura that is a will save, so that's pretty good. 10-foot aura. It's mediocre. Dazzled 1 on a fail. And stunned 1 on a crit fail. But then they're immune for a minute. This is a fairly bad ability. The immune for a minute takes this from really good to not good. Get a single chance to dazzle or stun, and then it does nothing. Yeah. It's alright. But not fantastic. Sickening Bite for brine or sea dragons. Add some goodness onto your bite. Fortitude save, which of course is not good. You can't use any of the bite add-ons together. So you can't use this and blasting or devastating. Yeah, this or blasting. Success is crit success automatic. That I don't like that. Failure is sicken 2, which is real good, and crit sicken 3. So that's it's level 16, so it's a high level ability, but it's decent. Not great, but decent. Sicken 2 is definitely a good effect. Trample. It sucks that it's only for Rift Dragons, and there isn't like a size limitation to it. Like, yeah. It's the trample ability. You go through things and you do damage. I mean, it's not fantastic. Violent Retort. Sovereign Dragon. They haven't had much for abilities. Just one of the best ones. Creature within your reach critically hits you. You take revenge against the creature who dared to land such a fearsome blow upon your august countenance. After doing the crit to your... After getting crit, make a claw strike against the triggering creature. If you have a tail unarmed strike, you can choose between a claw strike or tail strike instead. That's alright. I mean, you get a free attack when something crits you. That's alright. It's a little high in level for what it does, but it's alright. Void Gaze for Void Dragons. Once per minute. Will save. And then they're immune. Stunned 1. That's decent. It's pretty good. On a success, that's pretty damn good. For 2 action ability, it's not fantastic. And then confused for a minute on a failure, but they get a save every round. That's alright. It's pretty good. It's pretty damn good. Crit failure. Confused for a minute with no save. Ooh, that is really, really rough. Volcanic Purge, Magma Dragons. Breath add-on. Well, it is a meta breath. 5d6 persistent damage that scales up to 66. That and slows their speed. That is good. That is just really good. I'm going to have to end this here. I will finish the rest of them up in a quick video tomorrow, so enjoy.